With so many traits, borderline personality disorder is easily misdiagnosed. Here to talk about why and when this happens is Dr. Ramani.
Borderline personality disorder, because it takes in so many patterns, is often misdiagnosed as other clinical conditions. Foremost amongst these is bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. The misnomer is because a person with borderline personality disorder often has rapid mood shifts, several within a day, that fluctuation in mood gets misinterpreted as bipolar disorder, which is not like that at all. Bipolar there are mood swings, but they don't happen over the course of a day, they happen over the course of months.
Right.
So that's number one. And what happens is a lot of families will sort of generate this lay diagnosis, or friends will say, he or she must be bipolar. Mm-hmm. And it's for this reason, in fact, that videos like we see on MedCircle become so critically important for people to go to get information that's vetted by experts, so they can get that information to ensure that friends, family, loved ones get precisely the help they need, instead of trying to generate a diagnosis and steer people in the wrong direction. So that's foremost. Another place we see things get misdiagnosed are what we call impulse control disorders. These are things like disorders around anger management or gambling or any kind of acting out without thinking. In fact, road rage falls under a disorder we call intermittent explosive disorder. People who ramp up and very quickly get angry, and it can often get violent and scary, and that we often see that in borderline personality disorder. But that person with road rage or intermittent explosive disorder, they won't have things like fear of abandonment, they won't have the self-harm, they won't have all those other kinds of behavioral patterns alongside it. In addition, some of the patterns of borderline personality disorder, because they are so focused on mood, we may even misdiagnose it as what we call unipolar depression or major depressive disorder. We might diagnose it as an extreme anxiety disorder. It may get lost in eating disorder, where there's a lot of dysregulation and a sense of identity disturbance, because a person says, look at my body's not right. So because there's all these other co-occurring conditions that can happen with borderline personality, they can often eclipse it. So that's why it's so critical that a person see a licensed mental health professional to ensure that they get the full scope of the diagnostic picture.
I mean, I've learned so much today talking to you about this topic, and I feel like if I knew someone who maybe I thought had borderline personality disorder and a licensed therapist said yes, they do, I might even say, go see a second just to make sure. Am I wrong for thinking that?
No, you're not. And in fact, a lot of people often don't do that because for a lot of people, they can't always get covered for mental health care.
Right.
A lot of people feel a lot of stigma around getting mental health care. So even getting them over the threshold once is a miracle, let alone twice.
Especially for this.
Yes, but I do have to say this, that only getting that opinion, for example, from your primary medical physician is not necessarily where the buck should stop. I do think working with a psychiatrist, a psychologist, someone who's expert in seeing all of these disorders becomes critical, because they may be able to discern and say, hey, we have this going on, and this going on. And I can't tell you how many times I have worked with clients who were called X, but in fact it was one of the personality disorders. And then we understood why the treatment of choice was not working, because they were treating the wrong disorder. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of unnecessary medication going into a person, and it's a lot of time spent. That's why getting these diagnoses right out the gate, they're not labels, they are maps to getting the most efficacious treatment possible.
I know, we talked about that before. That is such a big takeaway.
Yeah.
We were not trying to get a label here. We're just trying to give you the best treatment possible. That's such a huge revelation.
Because you get very frustrated. Even the practitioner could get frustrated. If you're treating borderline personality disorder like it's bipolar disorder, you're going to get nowhere fast. You really are. It's not the same treatment model.
So you mentioned that in the three things: time, money. My big one was the medication.
Yeah.
You're treating someone who doesn't have this thing by giving them medication.
Right.
What are the possible side effects for getting medicine that you probably shouldn't have?
You know, again, I'm going to speak carefully here. I'm a psychologist, not a psychiatrist. But when it comes to medication, medication doesn't address a disorder. Medication addresses symptoms. So there's no magic pill for depression. There's no magic pill for anxiety.
Yeah, but say that
or
again, though,
bipolar.
so people really get that.
So medication addresses a symptom or
Yes.
symptoms. It does not address a disorder.
Yes.
You do not take a pill to make depression go away. You take a pill to address things like lack of energy and low mood. And if you're fortunate, that medication works well with you and it lifts the boat above the waves a little bit. So then we can get in there and do the
We can do talk therapy and actually
Exactly.
get to it.
For a person who is experiencing bipolar disorder, that a mood stabilizing agent, whether it be lithium or carbamazepine or something, is designed to help sort of bring in the manic symptomatology to something that's more manageable and in the range of normal. It's not magically erasing this. And I think that this idea that medication being a magic bullet is incorrect. That when you are treating a psychological or psychiatric disorder, you need therapy on board, because that's where you're getting the skills you can take away with you. And the treatment for borderline personality disorder is very much skills focused. It's very much on teaching people alternate strategies when they feel angry, how to deal with their own strong feelings of emotion that are all over the map, how to soothe themselves, how to engage in things like mindfulness and meditation at the moment their moods start getting out of control, how to engage in self-talk. They can engage in those skills even when the therapist is not in front of them. It's not about popping a pill as much as it is learning techniques that can help them. However, in borderline personality disorder, that's an adjunct to also using medication to help manage anxiety, depression, or the kinds of instability of mood. And depending on what's most prominent in a given individual, those medications would be used in conjunction with the therapy. You will use a treatment team. That's key.
And especially if there's co-occurrence happening.
Absolutely.
You have bipolar disorder and you've also been diagnosed with depression or something like that.
Yes, absolutely.
I imagine someone's watching this and they go, okay, my friend or my husband or somebody I know has been diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder. And they are watching this going, well, maybe it's actually borderline personality disorder. What is your advice to them?
You've got to get intervention, and it's not. There's no lab test for this. We don't stick a needle in someone's arm and do a blood test and say, oh, by the way, you have this and this. Wouldn't that be grand?
That'd be amazing.
That's not what this is about. So these are patterns, and in order to discern that pattern, ideally, there'd be a combination of things done: a very detailed clinical interview and a history, perhaps some psychological testing and questionnaires, and a real gold standard can sometimes be bringing in other family members or other people close to that individual and asking them questions as well. With all of that together, then you can make a very strong argument for this or both of these things together. And I can say as a clinician, sometimes it takes weeks or even months for us to really be clear, like, oh, it's not just this. It's also this. Psychiatry, psychology, these are not precise sciences. There's still a lot of just gathering all the data, and you have to be willing to tweak those hypotheses a few times as you get more and more information.
And that can be obviously frustrating for people, and I hear that. But I want to make sure that frustration doesn't lead people to stop taking action. If anything, perhaps it motivates them to just take careful, methodical action so that we do get the diagnosis, that's correct, and then we do get the treatment, that's correct.
That's right.
Okay, what is the one or two things someone can do to avoid a misdiagnosis?
I think to avoid a misdiagnosis, number one, absolutely critical, see a licensed mental health practitioner. I think the way misdiagnosis often happens is people ask friends and family. They may read a book without enough context. They may watch the wrong video instead of one that, again, something like MedCircle that has vetted, mental and medical health experts. So it's getting into someone's office. You can watch all the videos in the world, though ultimately you need to be in the same room as someone.
And how many times have you heard somebody break up with their spouse or something and then say, well, I really think he has, bipolar, or I really think da-da-da-da. And they might think that, wait, you don't know?
You don't know.
You're not a therapist, you don't know.
You don't know. And so, you could list all their symptoms and you could provide those to someone, but even when I'm given that, I really can't definitively give a third-party diagnosis in the sense of they're not in the room.
That's
I'm
right.
spitballing here.
Yes.
Based on the pattern you're giving me, and you may not be giving me a whole picture here.
Yeah.
So you need the person in the room. So anyone who wants that for their family member to ensure that you don't have a misdiagnosis, so you can get appropriate treatment, they do need to see a licensed mental health practitioner, again, preferably a psychologist or a psychiatrist who brings expertise in the diagnosis of more severe mental health conditions.
If you were closer, I'd high-five you on that. That's so good.
It's subtle. It's very subtle stuff, and I think that that's the key. And once you have that, and if you still don't trust, if you walked into someone's office and you didn't feel good about that, then by all means, see someone else. I'm going to say this by way of self-disclosure. Years ago, when I first got into therapy, because I don't think any therapist out there should be doing therapy without being in their own therapy. I think it's integral to my practice. I interviewed 3 therapists. I literally met with 3 of them, and I trusted my gut. Smartest decision I ever made. I put myself out financially as a student to do that. But I really was then able to be in a room, because it's a very intimate space.
But imagine how much you could have been put out financially if you chose the wrong one and then went through a 10-year treatment that was wrong.
I totally agree. So I think there's something to be said. If you feel good about it, then stick it out. But if there's something about in that room that doesn't feel right, you have to be your own advocate, or an advocate for your family member or loved one, and then go see someone else.
Yes.
That's your right as a client, as a patient, as a family member.
Excellent. Well, there are a lot of good takeaways here. I hope people will take this to heart and also share this with other people that they think could benefit from this, because there was a lot of moments here where I said, yes, I get that now, I understand that. Dr. Ramani, always a pleasure. Thank you for being here. Thanks for watching. Your next step is to head on over to MedCircle.com and sign up for the MedCircle Digest. What is it? Well, MedCircle will send you the latest articles and the latest videos on the mental health topics that matter most to you. So go to MedCircle.com, sign up for that digest, and let's keep this journey on better mental health moving forward.